Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, now let's welcome to the ENT student for discussion of chronic rhinosinusitis medical management, assessment of response to treatment. Yes, please.
Assessment of response to medical treatment. As the aim of treatment for chronic rhinosinusitis is to reduce the symptom load and impact on quality of life. These subjective symptoms need to be quantified to allow repeated measures in order to evaluate response to therapy. There are several validated diseases specificity, quality of life measures for use in chronic rhinosinusitis, knowledge of scores in the normal population, and the minimum clinical important difference facilitates detecting improvement, which is shown in tables at 97.1. Alternatively, a VAS scale may be used.
So we have to measure the quality of life, how we are going to have an impact of the treatment, how we are going to better the patient based on his lifestyle is concerned. And there are many things for that. There are many scores, of which number one is the visual MLOG score, which is very important. Yes.
This is the table 97.1 showing summary of outcome instruments and their key properties.
So these are all the different things. This is not like whatever the author has taken as a property, and then how the response is like. So adult acute rhinosinusitis and adult chronic rhinosinusitis. They have taken the score, and then all these things are like statistical calculations. We are not going to details of this. Next.
This concept of disease control is well defined for asthma, but has been largely neglected in chronic rhinosinusitis until the recent EPOS guideline, which is given in 97.2 table. However, the proposed table needs to be data driven. Recent publications has suggested a refinement of this to focus on nasal obstruction, endoscopic evidence of edema and mucus production, and systemic medication use as their either corticosteroids. A proposed NOSC system or no system was proposed. Nasal obstruction, systemic medication, and endoscopy stands for NOSE. Control of disease is both to prevent infective exacerbations and control baseline symptoms.
As we could see here, there is no criteria, nasal obstruction, systemic medication, and endoscopy. That is important. Like they have put different criteria for different understanding. So this is one of the criteria, like they have kept it. So we have to see whether there are exacerbations, whether they are able to control from the baseline, and you are able to see here that whether it is need of a corticosteroid or antibiotic. That is more important. Next.
This is a table representing the data.
So as you could see here, blockage, rhinorrhea, we could see that that sneezing, itching, rhinorrhea, and blockage are most important, and those are kept as a criteria here. Blockage, rhinorrhea, facial pain, smell, and sleep, nasal endoscopy of the deceased, and systemic medication. All these things are kept as a criteria. We are not going to details of this because what are the features that are required are being given over here, and these are the factors that are to be kept in mind when you are dealing with the chronic rhinosinusitis. Next.
Normal mucosa on endoscopy is the reference point, but even this is not associated with a no nasal symptom, as many will have rhinitis reactions to count from disease burden. Usually, 4 to 8 weeks should be allowed for treatment to have failed in patients with established chronic rhinosinusitis. If there has been improvement but incomplete resolution, a period of ongoing medical treatment is recommended. This is rarely with systemic corticosteroids. Recent evidence on either endoscopy or CT shows inflammation is associated with a higher rate of asymptomatic resolution.
So what we have to think here is about the normal mucosa on endoscopy. So what is that? It is a reference point, and even it is also associated with no nasal symptoms, as many will have rhinitis reactions related to some burden disease. So wherein you may not be having this nose disease itself, you cannot say just as easily as normal. Minimum 4 to 8 weeks treatment is needed for failed treatment. To say as failed treatment, minimum 4 to 8 weeks is needed here, and as you could see here, improvement may be there, but it is not a complete resolution. Sometimes it will be like that. Improvement, but not complete resolution. So treatments are recommended based on that. And as you could see, persistent evidence on either endoscopy or CT scan. Active mucosal information is also one thing which is very important. And even in a asymptomatic patient, you should keep in mind about all these things. The third point, if you see once again, ongoing medical treatment is recommended. This is rarely with systemic corticosteroids. So sometimes only for a few days we'll give, but sometimes we might have to prolong the corticosteroid dosage also. Next.
The figure showing poorly controlled CRS requiring ongoing medical treatment and likely revision surgery.
As you have already seen before in the previous discussion that chronic rhinosinusitis, it is a surgical disease which has to be given importance for surgery, and then you have to manage it with medically also. So surgical disease, how you have to do is a middle meatal antrostomy and all those endoscopic sinus surgery related steps you have to go for it, and then you have to go for a medical management also. Next.
Where patients are asymptomatic, treatment can be withdrawn in the presence of normal endoscopy and or CT. Where endoscopy remains abnormal, the patient should continue with saline irrigation and intranasal corticosteroids and counseled on the potential need for future therapy. Where there has been no response, the history and examinations findings should be reviewed to ensure both the correct diagnosis and to exclude symptom amplifiers that may be less amenable to standard treatment. For example, coexisting depression may lead to higher levels of symptoms for a given disease burden.
As you could see here in the first point, asymptomatic patients, you can remove the treatment, that is withdraw the treatment in the normal endoscopy or CT scan. So what are the things that you are going to do for the patient? You have to go for endoscopy or CT scan. These two are the things that are helpful for diagnosis. When endoscopy is abnormal, the patient should have some saline irrigation. Here is important point. Saline irrigation has to be done, and INCS, that is intranasal corticosteroid, may be useful and counseled based on further future therapy also. When there is no response, you have to think of the history. Number one. Number two is examination findings should be reviewed to ensure both correct diagnosis. So history should be reviewed once again, whatever he is telling, and you have to exclude the symptom amplifiers that may be less amenable to standard treatment. So that is like coexisting depression or hypothyroidism, whatever it is. There are many other diseases which can cause exacerbation of this, along with even the environmental factors or the patient and based on the patient's working conditions and based on patient's mental status like depression, as he has already given in this. Next.
Secondary chronic rhinosinusitis should be considered and assessment of the full respiratory system undertaken, including testing for secondary eosinophilic disorders, vasculitides, and immunodeficiencies where appropriate. Smoking cessation should be strongly encouraged. If there is no response and surgical treatment is being considered, a CT scan should be performed, even with positive endoscopy as an aid to surgery and exclusion of other diagnoses like fungal balls, AFS, neoplasia, if not already performed.
So as you could see in here, we have dealt about the primary rhinosinusitis, chronic rhinosinusitis. Secondary, primary has no reason idiopathically it is occurring, like our mast cell degradation, etc., what we have discussed. And secondary is related to a general body disease, like respiratory system disease, as we have seen, like in the the Cartagena syndrome or any other syndromes completely involving the body, and it presents as a rhinosinusitis. And you have to go for a secondary eosinophilic disorders, vasculitides, and other things which are related to that, and you have to go based on of what you are suspecting, like vasculitis, immunodeficiencies, etc. Smoking is very important. Why? Because smoking may lead to decreased ciliary motility, leading to the disease, and based on which surgical treatment is being considered. If there is no response to medical treatment, you have to go for surgical treatment, and CT scan is important, and you have to go for positive endoscopy findings whether the surgery has to be done or not, and other diagnosis you have to keep in mind is the fungal ball. So fungal ball is aggregation of a fungus. It's a benign condition. It is not a what you say, it does not enter into the bone, or mucoperiosteal junction is not breached, fungal ball remains as such. Immunocompetent host in fungal ball will be there, or allergic fungal sinusitis. Fungal sinusitis associated with allergy is called as allergic fungal rhinosinusitis. It is also called as AFRS. And sometimes you have to keep in mind neoplasia also, because I already told you in the class, neoplasia of the nasal cavity, it presents as a sinusitis only. You have to be very careful. Next.
Any patient with unilateral polypoid disease where there is a suspicion of malignancy, the presence of associated neurological or orbital symptoms or atypical features should not be considered for a trial of maximum medical therapy. They require urgent radiological imaging followed by surgery and histological examination where indicated.
See, you have to keep in mind about the worst things when you are dealing unilateral polypoidal disease. That you should keep in mind about the malignancy. The suspicion of malignancy is there. You have to think of a malignancy and associated neurological complaints. Like if there is any breach of the mucoperiosteum of the frontal sinus, for example, and going towards the brain, you have to think about the neurological symptoms. You should think of the orbital symptoms. We have recently done a case which has been having orbital cellulitis. Frontal sinus is invading towards the orbit, and then it is draining anteriorly just above the level of orbit. So, based on the frontal sinus surgery, patient got very good relief. And atypical features, whenever you think that it is having some amount of complicated related issues, you should not trial the medical therapy. You have to go for surgery sure shot. When there is any complication, you have to go for surgery sure shot, and then later on try for the medical therapy. So what you have to think is radiological imaging. Number one, you send it to radiology. Number two, you send it for surgery. Immediately, you send it for histological examination. All these things have to be done as fast as possible. If not, the patient might slip from your hands. Next.
Why does a medical therapy only approach fail? The question of when to be more aggressive in therapy of chronic rhinosinusitis is a common question. The dictum of a trial of conservative medical therapy before surgery in every case is false. Both fungal ball and AFS are examples where initial surgery is required. Especially in CRS with nasal polyposis, there is little basis to the concept of either medical or surgical treatment alone, as combined therapy is critical to control the disease.
As you could see here, don't blindly go for medical therapy only. Sometimes you need surgery, so it falls according to the statement. Fungal ball and allergic fungal sinusitis where initial surgery is required. You have to remove that mechanical obstruction like a fungal ball, allergic fungal sinusitis. You have to remove that mechanical obstruction and go for a antifungal if needed. Of course, we don't go for antifungals in fungal ball and allergic. We will treat for the allergy only. Especially chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyposis, there is a little basis to the concept of either medical or surgical treatment as a combination of critical to control the disease. With the polyposis, polyp is there. What will you do? Simply you remove the polyp surgically, then you will have a good effect. Next.
Thus, what is being achieved from intervening surgically? There will be CRS shiny nasal polyposis patients in whom the mucosal edema, basement membrane thickening, and fibrosis are causing osteal occlusions, which cannot be resolved medically and are leading to persistent disease. However, this concept is not true for CRS with nasal polyposis, ECRS, or eosinophilic subtypes. Simply operating to unblock or ventilate the sinus is not an endpoint supported by evidence.
So here, both are foolproof. Like there is nothing like only surgery or only medicine. Based on situation, you have to go surgically or medically. So with nasal polyposis, you have to remove the polyp and then go for medical treatment. Eosinophilic, especially treatable for medically, and eosinophilic subtypes are especially medically treatable. And the concept is only not only unblocking or ventilation, but also you have to go according to the case. So what is this osteal occlusion? The osteomeatal complex, which is there at the level of your maxillary sinus, gets occluded, which you have to open it by surgery. Then you have to go for medical therapy, as you have seen already that you can give the intranasal corticosteroid drops that is placed within the nasal cavity is very less effective. You have to go till the level of your the sinus cavity. So then only it will be useful. If not, it will be persisting disease. So surgery plus medicine both are useful for. So when you were asked about it, you have to say surgery and medicine both are useful for this treatment of this chronic rhinosinusitis. Next.
Access for topical therapies is critical as a goal for surgery for CRS patients. and thus allows a patient to switch from relying on systemic therapies to local treatments. Failure is defined by patient-focused outcomes rather than evidence of mucosal inflammation. Those patients who have a high symptom burden despite treatment or go on to have infective exacerbations are failures. The benefits of repeated courses of systematic treatment need to be weighed against the risk of adverse effects.
As you could see, a topical therapy access, we already discussed this. It is a critical goal. So let the drug go to the sinus mucosa. So it allows the patient from getting the relying on systemic therapies to local therapy. So then start the systemic therapies. So how do you define a failure here? So it is like patient-focused outcomes rather than evidence of mucosal inflammation. It's not the disease itself. Sometimes it can be because the patient is concentrating too much, or the patient is not taking the treatment properly. So high symptom burden is there. Even treatment based on treatment, the symptoms are still persisting. Then it is a like you have to think of infective exacerbations or failures. You have to think of a failure there. Even in spite of treatment, also if it is not getting cured properly. So repeated course of systemic treatment should always be kept in mind. You cannot keep on treating the patient like that. You have to have a question mark when to stop and when to start. Next.
We would consider the need for more than 2 courses of systemic treatment per year indications that medically only treatment has failed. Greater frequency may expose patients to deleterious effects of systemic corticosteroid use. Each course is recommended for 14 to 21 days as this best equates to lifespan of a tissue eosinophil. An accumulative dose less than 290 to 1000 milligrams is recommended with a maximum of 30 to 40 milligrams daily, as this is the range in which significant complications and medico-legal complaints occurred.
So as you could see, always 2 courses of systemic therapy per year. So how many times you can give systemic medication per year means you have to give 2 times maximum you can give like that. So greater frequency of corticosteroids is always deleterious, like osteoporosis, leading to increase in peptic ulcer, increase in diabetes, increase in hypertension, suppression of the hypothalamic pituitary axis. All these things can be there in this corticosteroid. You should be very careful in that situation. And what is the maximum course? Maximum is like 2 weeks to 3 weeks. That is 14 to 21 days. 21 days, 3 weeks, you can keep the lifespan of a tissue eosinophil. 21 days or 3 weeks, you can keep the lifespan of a tissue eosinophil. The maximum dose cumulative can be 1000 mg. And what is the maximum that you can give is 30 to 40 mg, wherein you can escape from all the legal issues. Next.
Those patients that fail to derive sufficient benefit from pre-surgical medical treatment and fulfill the diagnostic criteria for chronic rhinosinusitis, in whom an alternative diagnosis is not found, and who have confirmation of mucosal disease on CT, should be considered for surgery. Patients with complete nasal obstruction due to nasal polyps, where there has been no reduction in size following initial medical treatment, are unlikely to be able to achieve access to topical treatment. In the Van Zyl study, symptomatic improvement was the maximally shortly after completing prednisolone, and the benefit had significantly waned by 12 weeks. It may be worth considering surgical interventions at an earlier point in such patients.
So when will you give? So sometimes there won't be polyps, but you have to go for surgery. What is the indication? Then first point you can see that alternative diagnosis is not found, medical treatment not getting benefit. So then you have to go for CT scan and consider for surgery. Even those patients which do not have polyps. Polyps not there means it's not that you should not do surgery. You can go for surgery based on CT scan. You can consider for surgery even in the mucosal disease. This is alternative. You underline the alternative diagnosis. It's not diagnosis. It's alternative diagnosis. Other diagnoses
Yes,
are
sir.
not there. You have to go for surgery. Okay, that's very important point. Second point. Anyhow, polyps are there. You have to go for surgery. Without removing the polyps, you cannot deliver the drug locally into the sinuses. That is one thing. And third point, what is given is something like a zeal study, as they have said, maximal shortly symptomatic improvement after completing prednisolone and the benefit has significantly waned by 12 weeks. So you can make the patient feel happy for at least 3 months, that is 12 weeks, and you give a prednisolone course, but later on he will have to come back even for the surgery once again. So these things are very important. And surgical intervention is not a wrong. People think that going for surgery for a polypoidal disease or a sinusitis disease may be wrong, but it is not correct. According to standard textbook, what he is telling is you can go for surgery, no issue at all. Next.
Yes, sir. Medical treatment post-surgery. Allowing a transition to effect local or topical therapy is a critical role for surgical intervention. With this aim, surgery is often complete, wide, and designed to remodel the paranasal sinus to a common cavity that can be managed. Hypersecretory mucus can be easily removed and anti-inflammatory therapy effectively delivered. This is especially true for CRS with nasal polyposis, where local osteal obstruction is unlikely to play a major role in the perpetuation of the disease
So
process.
what you will do in surgery is you will make it as a single cavity open access for drug delivery. Surgery is made to help the drug to go inside the sinus. Next, make it fast. Time is elapsing.
Yes, sir. Although nasal polyps or the presence of asthma might identify these inflammatory patients, they are still often missed. A structured histopathology of sinus tissue using defined criteria for eosinophilic CRS or greater than 10 eosinophils per high power field. Figures 97.5 and 97.6. The diagnosis of ECRS has limitations. ECRS is associated with greater clinical and radiological severity, higher risk of asthma, and high risk of polyp recurrence when compared to non-CRS.
So when you take this eosinophilic chronic rhinosinusitis, like 10 eosinophils per high power field, 10 eosinophils per high power field, very important. And then additional 20% of chronic rhinosinusitis sign in nasal polyposis. Without that, they can be classified as ECRS. That is, eosinophilic group is almost 20%. You can remember like that. Even without polyps, you have out of 10 cases, you have got 2 cases. You keep it in mind. And prognosis of this eosinophilic chronic rhinosinusitis is that radiological severity is higher and risk of asthma is also higher and polyp recurrence is also higher. Next slide.
Yes, sir. This is the histopathological slide, sir.
As you could see in the corticosteroid sensitive, the eosinophils, like for example, we have said that 21 days is the lifespan of these eosinophils, and you can give it for 3 weeks. That is the reason for giving corticosteroid for 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, so you could see the subepithelial fibrosis is a feature of long-term tissue remodeling. In this particular B picture, subepithelial fibrosis could be seen, and poor prognosis based on this particular eosinophilic sinusitis has got poor prognosis. Next.
This is the table giving the details of histopathology report.
So as you could see, degree of inflammation present or absent or mild or moderate severe, eosinophilic count, you could see more than 10 or 10 is minimum, neutrophilic infiltrate, inflammatory predominance, whichever is predominant, basement membrane thickening, you should try it, subepithelial edema, you should say, hyperplastic papillary change, mucosal ulceration, squamous metaplasia, fibrosis. And when you take mucin, you should think of fungal elements like Charcot-Leyden crystals, they are present in the case of your fungal ailments, especially eosinophilic aggregates present or absent. So Charcot-Leyden crystals are even present in asthma also. Next.
Serum eosinophilia, while associated with ECRS and predictive of asthma, is not predictive of the localized inflammatory processes and was less sensitive for ECRS. Surgery provides an ideal opportunity to make this disease distinction. Corticosteroid irrigations are the mainstay of topical anti-inflammatory therapy post-ESS. They are delivered in large volume, positive pressure saline irrigations. These treatments are often mislabeled as high dose or high concentration, but neither of these is true.
So as you should know that ECRS, this is serum eosinophilia is not directly, the one which is there in serum is not linked to the mucosal eosinophilia. So you could say that they cannot be predicting the inflammatory process in the local mucosa, and for them you have to go for corticosteroid irrigations. Of course, sometimes it is misunderstood that it is high concentration is being given, but it is not so. It is given with saline. Next.
The delivered steroid dose is mostly in a more diluted form than simple sprays, and the total residue delivered is usually less than 5%, making the exposure to patient less than simple spray therapy. They are effective since they actually deliver the pharmaceuticals to the sinus mucosa. Studies have shown no effect on serum cortisol, urinary cortisol, or adrenocorticotropin hormone stimulation test.
So as you could see, these are all the tests for systemic steroid in elevation levels, urine cortisol, serum cortisol, ACTH stimulation test. All these are normal, even in spite of giving a this is steroid sprays into the nasal mucosa. So the residual delivery should usually less than 5%, and it is a simple spray. No need to worry at all. 30 years use also no problem. Next.
Summary. Medical therapy is the mainstay of management for rhinosinusitis. For acute infections, antibiotics are rarely required and treatment is largely supportive, except in presence of complications. For chronic disease, reducing mucosal inflammation is a cornerstone of treatment. Intranasal corticosteroids are the first line of treatment. Systemic steroids, immunomodulatory drugs, and novel monoclonal antibodies may be used in carefully selected cases.
So medical treatment for chronic rhinosinusitis, acute ones we are using antibiotics we have already dealt, and treatment is supportive except for complications if you have to go for surgery. Chronic disease, mucosal inflammation is very important. Intranasal corticosteroids, INCS is the first line of treatment, and systemic steroids, immunomodulated drugs like omalizumab, okay, mepolizumab, all we have seen that, and novel anticlonal monoclonal antibodies also helpful. Next.
Antibiotics may be of benefit in acute infective exacerbations. Endoscopic sinus surgery plays an adjunctive role in facilitating delivery of topical medications when standard delivery approaches have failed.
So you have to go for antibiotics and endoscopic sinus surgery. Next.
Key points. Medical therapy should have a three-way goal of reducing inflammatory load, normalizing microbial community, and restoration of mucociliary function. Medical therapy to the paranasal sinuses is primarily via the systemic route in the unoperated patient. Systemic corticosteroids is effective, but use is usually limited to 2 courses a year of 2 to 3 weeks duration and often less than 30 to 40 mg maximal daily dose as a reducing course. There is little evidence of osteal obstruction as a cause of CRS with nasal polyposis or the eosinophilic subgroup.
Next, all we have dealt all these things. Next.
Surgery, while potentially curative for some, is more commonly utilized to enable long-term local or topical therapy to control disease. Corticosteroid irrigations are common effective delivery mechanism in the post-surgical patient. Their use is similar to that of prophylactic inhaler for asthma patients.
So as you could see, surgery is helpful for many people. Corticosteroid irrigations will be helpful, and like similar to that of prophylactic irrigation for asthma patients. Next.
Thank you.